Hi, my name is Henry Martin, and I need to share with you something that completely changed my life. On September 14th, 2023, I died for exactly 6 minutes and 43 seconds. What I saw and heard during that short period transformed my view on absolutely everything. Before that, I was a successful businessman in New York. I had everything: money, status, influence. But I never really believed in God. Faith was just a crutch for other people, until the day I died and met Jesus. What he showed me about the future of the world, about Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and the mark of the beast will deeply shake you. It all started as an ordinary day. I woke up early, checked my cell phone, and reviewed my emails. The company had closed a major international contract. Everything seemed perfect, at least on the surface. I lived in a luxurious penthouse with a view of Central Park, the kind of wealth many only dream of. That morning, I had a meeting with investors at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. I clearly remember putting on my suit, fastening my Rolex on my wrist, and getting into my Tesla. The traffic was heavy, but I wasn't worried. Closing deals like that was routine for me. I was exactly in the middle of the George Washington Bridge when everything happened. In an instant, I was driving, mentally rehearsing the presentation I was going to make, and the next moment I heard the deafening sound of brakes screeching and metal twisting. I didn't have time to react. A truck invaded my lane and violently struck me. I still remember the impact, the sound of shattering glass, and my body being thrown forward. And then silence came. I felt my life slowly slipping away, my chest tightening, my vision blurring, my hands gradually releasing the steering wheel as the car spun out of control. Distant voices echoed around. People screamed, but everything disappeared as darkness completely engulfed me. Suddenly, I was floating above my own body. From above, I could clearly see the wreck of the accident. My Tesla was unrecognizable, twisted like crumpled metal. Paramedics hurriedly removed me from the vehicle. One of them shouted, "No pulse," while another added, "He's gone." But I hadn't left. I watched everything calmly from above, taking in every detail. I felt no fear, only an inexplicable peace. As I ascended higher, I began to sense a force, as if something was calling me. Then an intense light appeared in the distance. It wasn't just ordinary brightness, it was alive, pulsating. I felt an increasing pull, as if every fiber of my being was drawn toward that light. And then I heard a clear and gentle voice inside my mind. "Henry, come." I recognized that voice, and it was at that moment that everything began to change. I didn't walk to the light. I was carried to it, as if an invisible force gently pulled me. There was no fear. Instead, I felt an indescribable lightness and peace. All the pain, anxiety, and the incessant noise of the world had completely vanished. As I got closer, I began to hear something. It was music, but not like the songs we know on Earth. It was as if thousands of voices were singing together in perfect harmony, filling my being with a profound sense of comfort and wholeness. Suddenly, I realized that I was standing, or rather existing, on a surface that seemed solid, made entirely of light. The sky wasn't blue, it was golden, pulsating and alive. Then, I was no longer alone. A figure appeared before me, tall, imposing, and radiant. "Henry," it said softly. I immediately knew who it was, even without any explanation. It was Jesus. His eyes didn't just look at me, they saw deep within me. My soul, my thoughts, my sins, my victories, and my regrets. But his gaze carried no judgment, only a love so powerful and absolute that I had never experienced before. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. The moment I accepted, everything around us transformed. We were no longer surrounded by golden light. Now we were hovering above the earth. I could clearly see cities, oceans, and mountains. "I have something to show you," Jesus said. Unable to respond, I stood there silently, watching as astonishing scenes began to unfold beneath us. First, I saw the world exactly as it is today, people following their routines, working, living, and struggling to survive. But soon, the scene changed dramatically. I saw chaos taking over the streets, violent protests, governments collapsing, and financial markets crashing. Desperate crowds were screaming, searching for answers. Amid the confusion, a very familiar figure appeared before a large audience. It was Elon Musk, confident and charismatic, announcing something revolutionary. In his hands, he held a small microchip. "This chip will change everything," Elon told the enthusiastic crowd. "It will protect you against identity theft, give you immediate access to finances, and connect your minds directly to a global network." The audience erupted in applause. They were amazed by the promise of security and convenience. "Watch closely," Jesus whispered beside me. "This is how it all begins." Then I watched as the chip worked in practice. People paid for their meals, travels, and accessed information simply with a gesture or thought. At first, it seemed harmless, even useful, but soon I realized something terrible was happening. Those who accepted the chip began to change slowly. The sparkle in their eyes disappeared, their smiles faded. They became cold, distant, and apathetic. Worse, they stopped praying, stopped believing. That small device was not just controlling their finances, it was controlling their souls. "The enemy will not come with clear threats," Jesus calmly explained to me. "He will come bearing solutions." Then he turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow. "You need to warn them, Henry." I was paralyzed, trying to comprehend what I had just witnessed. "But why would they accept that?" I finally asked. Jesus replied, "Because they will trust the wrong leaders. They will seek answers in men, not in God, and the enemy knows that." Another scene unfolded before me. A new figure appeared on the horizon. It was Donald Trump. He was addressing an immense crowd, promising to restore peace and stability to the world. With strength and authority, he captivated the people's attention. "Trump will return to power," Jesus revealed. "And at first, he will speak truths, but even he will be deceived." I saw Trump signing agreements with the United Nations, adopting policies that initially seemed to bring the much-desired peace. However, everything changed quickly. Then came the mark. "It will seem like progress," Jesus explained. "It will seem like security, but it will be a trap." My heart ached as I saw people celebrating, happy, unaware of the darkness growing behind that false promise. "Henry, you need to warn them before it's too late," Jesus insisted, urgency in his voice. At that moment, I felt a strong energy envelop me, and suddenly I began to fall backward. The light weakened, the music slowly faded away, and then I opened my eyes again. When I woke up, I was back in my broken body, lying on a hospital bed, but nothing would ever be the same. The vision I had witnessed would not let me forget. Jesus had clearly shown me Elon Musk and the advance of the microchip, but now he extended his hand, pointing toward the horizon, and new images began to quickly emerge before my eyes as if time were accelerating. I saw the United States, but it was no longer the America I knew. Streets were overtaken by chaos, violent protests, fires devastating major cities, and people were hungry and desperate for answers that never came. The government seemed lost, divided, and incapable of resolving the situation. Then Elon Musk reappeared, this time before an even larger audience. Behind him, Enormous screens displayed the phrase, "A new beginning." "We have the solution," Elon declared in a firm and serene voice. "The world has suffered for too long. We need order, security, and unity." The screens showed scenes of hunger, violence, and despair, as he once again raised the small chip in his hand. "With this, you will no longer need money or documents. Your medical and financial information, as well as your identity, will be secure, all in one place. No more fear, no more hunger." The crowd erupted in applause, but I felt Jesus squeeze my hand again, whispering, "Watch closely." Once again, the scene changed. I saw thousands of people forming huge lines to receive the chip. Some hesitated at first, but when they saw how much easier life became for those who accepted it, they quickly abandoned their resistance. Gradually, everything depended on that device: shopping, transportation, access to work, and even medical services. Without it, life became practically impossible. Then the image darkened, and I perceived the grim reality taking shape. People who rejected the chip began to be barred from entering supermarkets and public buildings, progressively being excluded from society. Soon after, arrests started for those who refused to accept the new system. "Do you see how easy it is?" Jesus asked sadly. I watched families being torn apart, children pleading with their parents to accept the mark so they could eat. Churches split between those who believed it was a blessing from God and those who warned about the mark of the beast. "Even my followers will be deceived," Jesus revealed, his voice full of deep pain, "because the threat will not come openly. It will be disguised as the solution that everyone is seeking." My heart sank as I saw people of faith losing their spiritual connection. Not because they were forced, but because they couldn't see the trap. And at the center of it all was Elon Musk, not as a tyrant, but as a savior in the eyes of the world. "This will be only the first step," Jesus explained gravely, "and they will accept it voluntarily." I watched Elon Musk, now transformed into the architect of this new global system. What surprised me the most was the ease with which people trusted him. His calm, logical, and persuasive demeanor seemed harmless. "But why him?" I asked Jesus. "Because he holds the key to technology," he replied. "People believe in technology more than they believe in me." The vision changed again. Elon was sitting in a large meeting room, surrounded by the world's top leaders. Countries that were once enemies were now cooperating. The United States, Russia, China, and even countries in the Middle East were united in a single economic system. Agreements were signed, handshakes exchanged. "He will unite the nations," Jesus said, "not through war, but through technology." The microchip quickly spread, allowing everyone to perform financial transactions with a simple gesture. Diseases began to disappear, hunger was drastically reduced. At first glance, the world seemed like a true paradise. "But what's wrong with that?" I asked. Jesus replied firmly, "They have stopped trusting me. They have come to trust Elon, the system, human wisdom." Then I saw something frightening. Those who had accepted the chip could no longer feel the presence of God. Their prayers became empty, their hearts turned cold. At first, it was almost imperceptible, a slight sensation of spiritual numbness. They still attended churches and mentioned God, but in a mechanical way, without genuine emotion. "The chip is not just technology," Jesus explained sadly. "It is spiritual. It blocks the ability to hear and feel me." At that moment, Elon Musk announced the next phase of the plan: direct neural integration. Now, the chip would not only handle finances and identity, but it would be directly connected to people's thoughts. Their minds could be monitored, their behaviors adjusted. "And they will accept it without resistance," Jesus said. because it will make life even easier. I watched Elon on a platform, surrounded by people kneeling before him. They did not see him as a god, but as a leader, a savior. Once again, the vision darkened, and Jesus explained, "Everything begins with convenience, but it will end in absolute control." Then a new image appeared before me. Donald Trump reappeared, older yet still strong and confident. He was speaking at a massive rally, promising to restore power, order, and to end the chaos. A crowd listened intently, filled with enthusiasm. Trump raised his hand, and immediately everyone fell silent, hanging on his every word. "The United States will rise again," declared Trump forcefully. "We will reclaim our strength, restore order, and put an end to chaos." Behind him were world leaders, flags waving as a sign of unity. There was strength and determination, but also a subtle tension hanging in the air. Something was wrong. "Trump will return to power," Jesus told me, "but even he will be deceived." Soon, I saw Trump signing a global pact, uniting nations under a single political and economic system, supported by religious leaders. The crowd celebrated, believing they had achieved definitive peace. "They will think that they have achieved peace," Jesus warned, "but it will not last." Then I saw Trump signing another order, making the chip mandatory for employment, healthcare, and bank access, justifying it as necessary for national security. The majority accepted it without question, including many Christians. "He will believe he is doing the right thing," Jesus revealed to me, "but he will be deceived." I watched Trump shaking hands with Elon Musk in front of the cameras, uniting politics with technology. "It is then that the trap will be closed," Jesus explained. The scene grew even darker. Nations were now united by the chip. It was impossible to work, travel, or buy food without it. People who initially refused were gradually excluded, imprisoned, and separated from their families. Parents pleaded with their children to accept the chip out of fear of hunger and suffering. Churches emptied, and religious leaders who once warned about the mark now openly promoted it. "Even my church will split," Jesus said, visibly saddened. Then I saw secret communities forming among those who refused the chip. They grew their own food, exchanged goods with each other, and were protected by invisible angels from the rest of the world. Although darkness covered everything around, these groups shone brightly. "My faithful will be sustained," Jesus assured, "but they will suffer because of their faith." Then, before me, Trump and Elon Musk appeared together in an imposing room, surrounded by men in dark suits and shadowy figures, clearly not human, hidden in the shadows. "They will not know who truly controls them," Jesus revealed urgently. "You need to warn my people now, before it's too late." The vision changed again, and I found myself in the midst of a bustling city. The people around me seemed normal at first glance, but soon I noticed something strange. Their faces showed no emotion. Their movements were mechanical, lifeless. And then I noticed a terrifying detail. A faint light pulsed beneath the skin of their right hands and others on their foreheads. "It is the mark," explained Jesus, deeply shaken. I turned around in fear and found Jesus by my side with a deep sadness in his eyes. He raised his hand, and instantly I saw beyond the physical appearances of those people. I could see their souls. They were completely dark, empty, lifeless. "They have been marked," Jesus said, "and they don't even realize what they've lost." I watched in anguish as people entered stores, paying with just a wave of the hand and unlocking doors with a simple touch. A young mother held her child in her arms, and I noticed the mark faintly glowing on the child's hand. Both looked empty and apathetic. "This is not just technology," Jesus explained. "It is a spiritual contract. By accepting the mark, they renounce the freedom to choose me. Then I saw a man at a security checkpoint. He presented his hand, the light shone green, and he was allowed to pass. Another man tried the same, but he did not have the mark. His expression turned to despair as soldiers approached to take him away by force. No one reacted. No one even looked. "They are insensitive," Jesus commented sadly. "The mark does not only alter the body, but also the heart." Next, I saw churches filled with people who had accepted the mark. Pastors were preaching, calling it a divine blessing, something positive sent by God for prosperity and security. The faithful agreed without question, their eyes vacant and devoid of emotion. "Why are they accepting this?" I asked, anguished. Jesus replied calmly, "Because it solves their problems. Because it makes their lives easier. They will not realize the price they are paying until it is too late." Then I saw a man in front of his house, kneeling and praying desperately. His hands were trembling while children cried inside. On the other side of the street, soldiers stood watch, ready to act. "They will take everything from those who refuse the mark," Jesus warned. "Their homes, their jobs, even their families." I saw the man being forcibly taken by the soldiers as his children screamed in despair. His house was marked with a red symbol, signaling that he was an enemy of the system. "This will not happen suddenly," Jesus emphasized. "It will be gradual, slow, so discreet that people won't realize they're already trapped until it's too late." I then observed crowds walking in orderly lines, their faces expressionless as they awaited instructions. "Their souls no longer belong to them," Jesus revealed. "When they accept the mark, there is no turning back." "But why can't they go back?" I asked, anguished. Jesus looked deeply at me and explained, "Because the mark is not just physical. It is a spiritual pact with darkness. By accepting it, they surrender their souls, and that choice is irreversible." My heart sank as the crowd advanced silently and obediently toward a huge building with bright, cold lights. "Warn them, Henry," Jesus said urgently. "They cannot accept this no matter the cost." The vision changed again, and now I was in a huge hall made of glass and steel, filled with people staring intently at a gigantic screen displaying the calm, smiling face of Elon Musk. "We are entering a new era of peace and prosperity," announced Elon with absolute confidence. "The chip has solved the problems of hunger, disease, and security. Now, the world is finally united, without fear." The crowd erupted in applause, euphoria taking over everyone. But I could clearly see the coldness in their eyes. "Watch closely," Jesus said beside me. Then I saw a young woman in the midst of the crowd. She smiled, but there was something different in her eyes, a silent, deep fear. She turned to her friend and whispered, "Something is wrong. I can't feel anything anymore, not even the presence of God." Her friend replied calmly, "Relax, it's just an adaptation phase. It will pass soon." But the sadness and emptiness on the young woman's face only grew. "People will stop feeling because the connection with me has been severed," Jesus explained sorrowfully. I saw people trying to pray, desperate for a spiritual response that never came. Their hearts were blocked, unable to hear the voice of God. Pastors preached empty sermons, devoid of the Holy Spirit's presence. It wasn't that God had stopped speaking. It was that they could no longer hear him. I then observed families gathered around the table, sitting in absolute silence without conversation or laughter. They only stared at their hands, where the faint glow of the mark pulsed slowly beneath the skin. They were connected, yet completely disconnected from one another. "They are no longer free," Jesus stated with deep sadness. "Now, they follow the system until the end." The scene changed abruptly, revealing a global economic collapse. Financial markets were plunging. Banks were closing their doors, while desperate crowds formed lines trying to withdraw money that no longer existed. And amid the chaos, Elon Musk reappeared on the screen, serene and composed. "We have the solution," he declared calmly. "A new digital currency without inflation or financial crises. Definitive stability." From that moment on, the chip became indispensable for survival. Without it, no one could buy food, pay rent, or travel. They will accept it because they will have no choice, Jesus revealed to me with sadness. I saw people losing their homes, sleeping on the streets, while those who accepted the mark remained comfortable, safe, and protected. Those who accept will be rewarded. Those who refuse will suffer, Jesus warned. I then saw Christians gathering in secret, hidden in basements, isolated fields, and small houses. By candlelight, they read hidden Bibles, sharing strength and hope. They will be persecuted, Jesus warned sadly. Painful images appeared before me. Soldiers invading houses, people being dragged away by force for refusing the mark. They will be labeled as dangerous, extremists, Jesus explained, and even their families will betray them. But amid this persecution, miracles began to occur. Food appeared where there had been nothing before, and angels protected the faithful in dark places. "I will provide for them, as I did with Elijah in the desert," Jesus assured, "but they need to be prepared from now on." Suddenly, the vision changed completely. I found myself in a small village, surrounded by green hills and dense woods. The houses were simple, made of stone and wood, and gardens were everywhere. People worked peacefully, cultivating the land and caring for the animals. It was a tranquil place and, above all, protected. "These are my faithful," Jesus said softly. I walked slowly through the village, observing the simple and peaceful life of that place. Men built houses with manual tools, women prepared food over open fires, and children ran joyfully through the fields. Despite its simplicity, the atmosphere was filled with a deep harmony, unlike anything in the rest of the world. A villager approached me with a smile and handed me a fresh apple. "Here we share everything, and what we have is enough." Intrigued, I asked Jesus how these people managed to survive without accepting the mark. He replied calmly, "Because I am the one who takes care of them." At that moment, I saw a woman praying on the ground, and miraculously plants began to sprout quickly beneath her hands. A gentle rain started to fall, even though the sky was clear. "I will give you food, water, and shelter," Jesus said. "But above all, I will give you peace." Then I noticed a man at the edge of the village, watching the forest around him intently. He appeared calm yet alert. "They are being persecuted," Jesus revealed. At that moment, shadowy figures emerged silently from the forest, soldiers, armed and dangerous. But something incredible happened. A wall of light appeared between the soldiers and the village, preventing them from advancing. The soldiers retreated in confusion, unable to penetrate that invisible barrier. "My hand protects them," Jesus explained serenely. I observed, amazed, angels walking among the villagers, radiant beings, tall and strong, with swords of light at their waists. They carefully guarded the boundaries of the village, keeping their eyes watchful. As I did in the time of Elijah, Jesus said firmly, "I will care for my faithful. Manna will fall from the sky, water will flow from the rocks, nothing will be lacking for them." In the center of the village, people gathered in a circle, raising their hands in praise of God. Their chants echoed softly through the hills, filling everything around with an indescribable peace. "The world will call them outcasts and rebels," Jesus explained, But to me, they are beloved children. They will never lack anything. However, not everyone would find this refuge. I observed a hesitant man at the entrance of the village. He had not received the mark, but there was doubt and fear in his eyes. Jesus, watching him intently, said he must choose between trusting in me or trusting in the world. Then, slowly, the man stepped forward and accepted the hand of one of the villagers. The fear disappeared from his face, replaced by absolute tranquility. "There's still time," Jesus said softly, "but it's running out quickly." Turning directly to me, he placed his hands on my shoulders, looking at me with both firmness and love. "Henry, you need to warn them." I asked him, "What exactly should I say to them?" With intensity in his eyes, he answered clearly that the time is near, that I'm coming back soon and they need to be prepared. Jesus raised his hand, and once again I saw frightening images hovering above us, chaos spreading rapidly, wars devastating entire countries, frequent natural disasters, governments falling, armies marching through the streets, desperate crowds crying out for help. And there was Elon Musk, offering the solution that everyone was seeking, promising salvation and security. "They will trust him," Jesus said sorrowfully, "but it will be a trap." The image changed again, and now Donald Trump was signing important documents, while Elon Musk stood by his side. On the screen behind them, it was clearly written, "Unified New World Order." "Even many of those who know me will be deceived," Jesus revealed, his voice heavy with sadness. "But then, how can they resist?" I asked in anguish. Jesus replied clearly, "By knowing my voice and trusting in me, even when the world calls you fools." Then Jesus gently touched my forehead, and I began to see the world from a completely new perspective. I clearly saw dark spiritual forces secretly operating behind world events, whispering into the ears of political leaders, manipulating decisions. Invisible chains bound the hands and feet of those who had accepted the mark. "They will believe they are free," Jesus explained, "but they will be imprisoned without even realizing it." I witnessed churches being closed, Bibles burned in public squares, and preachers standing before empty pews. People who once proclaimed their faith now remained silent and empty, incapable of feeling any spiritual connection. But then Jesus looked me in the eyes with hope and said clearly, "There is still hope, Henry. Tell my people that there is hope." He gently touched my forehead again, and immediately I began to understand everything with even greater clarity. I saw the spiritual forces behind all that was happening, dark figures leading humanity into a carefully planned trap. Yet, in the midst of that deep darkness, I heard Jesus say, firmly and softly, "Tell them there is still time, that I am coming soon. They need to hear me."